tonight's City of Covington Planning Commission meeting to order. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Boone.
Here.
Mr. Davidson.
Here.
Ms. Swords. Here. Mr. Celestine. Mr. Villery.
Here.
Mr. Bullock. Here. Mr. Hudson.
Here. We have the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Commissioners, do we have any amendments or changes to make to those minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion. We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Mr. Boone.
Yes.
Mr. Davidson. Ms. Swords. Mr. Celestine. Mr. Villery. Mr. Bullock. Mr. Hudson.
Yes. Okay, we have two cases on the agenda tonight. I am moving that we take the second case for Mr. Vineyard and move it to the front so that we can dispose of that if possible. Is that okay, Ron? We're going to move it? Okay. The case is number 25-03-02. Sale. It's a request to purchase an undeveloped portion of Joyner Street, located between Square 20 and the remaining portion of Square 19, Connolly Addition, to the City of Covington between West Edwards Street and West 31st Avenue and Collins Boulevard and North Florida Street. The portion of Joyner Street being approximately 0.275 acres, measuring 50 by 240. The petitioner is Ralph Vineyard, and obviously the owner is the City of Covington. Mr. Rodriguez.
Give you some background on this. The best way to look at it is if you look at the map that's part of your application. Mr. Vineyard owns Square 19, and he also owns Lot 5 of Square 20, and he has a purchase agreement to buy Lot 4, Square 20. Initially, Square 119 was 240 by 240, like all the other squares. The state of Louisiana appropriated that square for the widening of Collins Boulevard. So you ended up with a portion of property that is 60 by 240. Well, the problem is with that depth of property, it's basically out of commerce, so it's very difficult to meet the requirements of setback lines, parking, and landscaping when you only have 60 feet in width of property. So his intention is to purchase Joyner Street from the city, Lot 5 and Lot 4, which is going to allow him to use that property for commercial development. The city Public Works Department has put a report in your package that there are no utilities, sewer or water in the proposed area to be sold.
Commissioners, you have any questions for the city?
I do.
Mr. Villery?
Does he own both sides of the right-of-way?
He owns 19, one side, and he owns Lot 5, half of the other side, and then he has a purchase agreement on Lot 4.
So he will
own both sides.
So in effect, you're revoking the street, and the adjoining property owners are going to...
Well, but he's got to buy it.
Well,
He's got to buy Lot 4, he's got to buy the street, and then he'll own a parcel that's 170 by 240.
I just, this is more of a typical revocation, where when you revoke it, property owners on either side have the opportunity to purchase.
No, that's not correct.
What is,
So the way our code is written, if you have a revocation, a true revocation means that when the city revokes the street, the adjoining property owners to the center line of the street become the owners of the property, but the city cannot charge for that. It's free on a revocation. The other option is what this is, which is a sale, where the petitioner requests to buy the street.
so the revocation, you can't sell the...
On a true revocation, there is no consideration.
We didn't do that in the past, where we revoked and the property...
Years ago, well, you got to know the history of it. Years ago, there was no such thing as a sale of a public street. The only enabling state legislation was to allow a revocation. A revocation requires a petition signed by the owners of all adjoining properties on the street. Then if the governing body determines that the street is no longer needed for public purposes, they can revoke it, and then by law, it reverts then ownership to the center line of the street to the adjoining property owners. About 30 years ago, the parish of St. Tammany went to the state to have special legislation passed to allow another remedy rather than a revocation, which is a sale. The difference being the sale does not require the signature of all the adjoining property owners. The test is the same, that the street is no longer needed for public purposes, but then the parish gets an appraisal and the petitioner has to buy the property from the parish. Now, once the parish was able to get that legislation passed, all the municipalities in St. Tammany Parish, Slidell, Covington, and Mandeville all followed suit, and they pursued special enabling legislation, and pursuant to that enabling legislation, the city of Covington adopted their own version of the sale of a public street. So both matters before you tonight involve the sale of a street. When you go with a sale, you don't necessarily sell to the adjoining property owners if they're not one of the petitioners, because you can't force them to put up the money.
I remember that when we originally, I was involved in it when we did revocations and required an appraisal of the property back in the 90s.
I'm not sure when the legislation went into effect, but the appraisal issue never arose before the sale issue, before the sale was authorized, which didn't take place.
I've never heard of the sale of property. I mean, you can always sell property, but I'd always heard of it as being a revocation. I understand that it's an option in our code,
Right.
but I'm just saying in the past, my
Right.
understanding was you
Well,
revoked
there
it.
now is a distinction between a revocation, which is the old form, which is giving it away, and the
You're
sale.
saying that never has the city ever revoked and charged adjoining property
Oh,
owners
all the time.
appraised value.
Well, yes, we have. We've been doing that for 25 years. The difference is, it depends on who requests the sale. In other words, if I own one side of the street and my neighbor on the other side of the street says, I don't want to put up any money, I don't want the street, well then I can buy the street myself if I want to put up the money. On your revocation, without the petition of all of the adjoining owners, you can't revoke. The test is the same, whether the street is no longer needed for public purposes. The methodology of disposition varies with the nature of the original petition.
So the sale allows, if somebody doesn't want to revoke, one side does, it allows you to sell.
Correct.
But in the past, we have revoked and sold the right of way.
Absolutely,
to the
where
adjoining
both
property.
sides wanted it. Absolutely correct.
Any other questions, Commissioner, for the city? Would the petitioner or someone want to speak on behalf of Mr. Vineyard? So please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Bo Bryant. My address is 115 Cherry Laurel Drive in Covington. Yeah, like Mr. Rodriguez said, we're trying to put the whole piece back together to make it commercially viable. That road kind of hampered developing the frontage. So if we can put the whole thing together, meeting the landscaping and setback requirements, it would just make it a little easier to develop the property in the future.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions?
And you have a purchase agreement on that lot?
Yes, sir.
Just another point of clarification, the lady who owns Lot 4 signed a letter of no objection. Even though she's not a petitioner, she signed a letter of no objection.
But you're going to buy it anyway?
Yes, sir.
The likelihood of that going through, that sale going through is when?
I think the sale, we kind of timed it with the meetings to follow this process to make sure that the road could be purchased. So I think the purchase agreement should run through May.
If it gets approved tonight, it would be on the council agenda for introduction in April or May. And then once the council votes yea or nay, if the council votes for the sale, then as soon as the sale is completed, the purchase agreements are tied into the approval
Yes.
of the revocation or sale.
Commissioners, any other questions or comments? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to adopt.
Second?
First and a second, roll call, please.
Mr. Boone?
Yes.
Mr. Davidson?
Yes.
Ms. Swords?
Yes.
Mr. Celestine? Mr. Villery?
Yes.
Mr. Bullock? Mr. Hudson?
Yes. Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you. Let me also state what I forgot to say earlier in the beginning of the meeting. Please turn off all of your cell phones, except me. No. I don't want any comments, quote unquote, from the peanut gallery when people are speaking. Don't want any outbursts, so you can help yourself out the side door. And when we have people speak for or against, or for whatever reason during this meeting, I want to limit you to 5 minutes, thereabouts, and I don't want to hear the same thing from each person over and over and over again. If you have something new to say, then by all means, please say it. I don't know who has what to say with the cards that I have. I have 4 or 5 cards. With that said, let's proceed with the case at hand. This is case number 25-03-01, a request to purchase a portion of South America Street described located in section 44 T7S R11E, City of Covington. The portion of South America Street south of Carroll Drive being approximately .82 acres, measuring 447.74 feet by 82.67 by 444.11 by 79.35. The petitioner is M.A. Favreau Bell of Favreau Bill LLC. The owner, obviously, again, is the City of Covington. Mr. Rodriguez, please.
Just a quick comment from the administration. If you look in your packet, you'll see comments from the city engineer. As you may be aware, the Favreau family began acquiring the property on either side of America Street from 16th Avenue to its dead end in the mid-1920s. Since that time, the city administration has searched the records of Public Works, and we can find no evidence where the city has done any maintenance, repair to America Street beyond 16th Avenue, nor have we expended any funds on any drainage. And the city administration does not want to assume the maintenance, repair, or upkeep of either the street or the drainage of America Street beyond 16th Avenue or the area being revoked. And we have the Director of Public Works, Mr. Jim O'Berry, and the city engineer, Ms. Callie Baker, here to comment from their respective departments.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for him right now?
My only question is, there's a couple of sections in the code. In fact, one of them in particular, I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, but section 5.1C, paragraph C7, private streets. There shall be no private streets platted in any subdivision within the city limits of Covington. Every lot in subdivided property shall be served by a publicly dedicated street. In this situation, if that is revoked, because it has to be revoked before it's sold, correct? There's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's 6 lots that would not be serviced by, in addition to the petitioner, or Mr. Frederick, there'll be 7 lots that are not serviced by a public street because of action by us, if that was the case.
I don't disagree with that, but the city council wrote that. The city council can do what they want.
They could revise the code, but as it is a code, and it's a shall, it's not a may or a hey if you want to do it. It's there shall be no private road. Everybody has to be accessed by a public street. So they could change the code short of changing the code, I don't see how we can,
Well, I don't disagree with that language, but Mr. Frederick has a private driveway.
I don't think that the city has the obligation to open a road for an individual. There's a case on Ninth Avenue between Jefferson and Madison, where somebody didn't want people driving down Ninth Avenue, and they put post bollards up in the middle of the street to stop. There's no company that can't do it. It's been there for over 25 years. So that's one way to handle it, is the fact that you don't have to open the road up. You don't have to improve it to city standards. City's not in the road building business. My understanding is when the city normally improves a road, they charge a front foot assessment to the adjoining property. It's in the state law. That gives them the opportunity to be able to do that. But there's no obligation to open the road up. And I think there is an obligation to keep it as a street because of the code. That's my position. I don't think we should open it, and I don't think we should sell it.
How long has the tennis court been there?
Good evening. I'm the Public Works Director. My name is Jim O'Berry. So I'd like to comment as far as drainage goes on that road. So in my tenure with the city, we have done virtually zero work on that road. And if we were to make it a throughway, it would require, for lack of a better term, a complete rebuild. And not only that, we would have to acquire several different lateral servitudes to get the drainage from the berm, for lack of a better word, that we're gonna build to get that to the river. We would have to acquire lateral servitudes to go through those properties to get to the river.
How many,
Please.
how many roads have you opened in the city of New Shannon?
I've opened zero.
Thank you.
Jim? On the utilities that go from 16th to that berm, tried to find those again today on the city map. All of these, I have to assume that all of these lots, 2, 4, 5, 6, or 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 24, 25, is served by the laterals that come from 16th Avenue south beyond the tennis court?
That
Do we
I'm
know
not,
that?
that I'm not sure of, Mr. Cecil. I haven't
Okay.
been that far back.
There's a fire hydrant that is just south of the tennis court, between the tennis court and the private drive that connects to South Hampshire.
Yes, sir.
Is that in the city maintenance flush? Do you know if that's serviced by the city still, or is it?
In my tenure, we have not serviced it.
It's inactive.
No, sir.
And with the services that would have to be provided to these residents on what's considered South America Street, the consequence of selling that to and privatizing that street, we would have to acquire or require adequate servitude for those utilities based on what's there. That's correct?
If it was opened as a throughway. Yes,
Right.
sir.
And I'm certainly appreciative of our report from our engineer about what it would cost the city, projecting that if we put that street back into service and connected it to that private drive, we open Pandora's box, and I've said that the last meeting, but we create a lot of problems with drainage and and especially in its close proximity to the river. That's correct. So that was the main question I had about the access and utility easement that would have to be provided through there so you could access those existing utilities without knowing exactly where they are.
Yes.
Thank you.
Despite the fact that you have not done any work on the dell, is the city required to maintain the fire plug?
I don't know that it's active.
You don't know if it's active.
I don't, no, sir, I don't know that it's active.
For the city, Mr. Broderick, if nothing, well, let's just say we have before us something to make a motion for, so something's going to happen, one way or the other. If at the end of the day, it's denied and doesn't get overturned and the street stays as it is, when is it the city's obligation to do whatever it should be doing with the street versus all the other streets that are on the list to be taken care of? Does it end up being on a list and they have to start doing something, or do they just ignore it? From property owners, say, well, now that you've got the street, let's fix it. You don't think so? What?
I don't think that the city has an obligation to maintain a street, to maintain the street. I think they do have an obligation to safety, but to maintain water. And if the water, does Mr. President's utilities go through that right? So they have an obligation to do that. I don't think they have an obligation to fix the street. We have other cases where people have gone to the city and asked to open the road as a driveway. And they've opened it as a driveway. The city has allowed the individual to open it as a driveway. And it functions as a driveway. And the city doesn't maintain it. I mean, the city has a hard time maintaining an alley.
I understand that, but it creates an issue of an obligation to something, potentially.
I don't think so. I think, the other thing is, we're only gonna be here for a short period of time. The city's gonna be here forever.
Speak for yourself. Um,
So, anyway,
Okay.
the things you do today, you gotta look 100 years in the future. In the future, somebody might wanna open that and make it a road and develop property, develop more property.
All right, let's go ahead and hear from the petitioner. Mr. Rome, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Marone, P.O. Box 1810, Covington, 70434. I'd like to start by addressing a couple of the things that came up in the discussions just now. With regards to Mr. Villery's comments, I respectfully disagree that what we're asking you to do is plat a private road. That's not what this is about. I mean, we are not coming to you with a subdivision request saying we want to create some lots and we're going to create this drive right here, but we want to keep it private. That's what the code says that you can't, that I don't believe that you can do. So I think that's different than what we're asking here tonight. With regards to Mr. Hudson, very good question about the utilities that are in that right-of-way or may be in that right-of-way. I would say that the code contemplates that very concern that you have, and it specifically says in the code when it talks about the ability to sell the street or sell the right-of-way, that if the city has utilities or needs utilities, that servitudes would be reserved for that purpose, to make sure that any services that are there are uninterrupted, or if the city said, look, we may need the ability to put future services there, the code requires that there be servitudes put in place at the time the sale takes place, so the city has that ability going forward. There's been some suggestions that, that our request this evening is not proper because there was a similar request made last year, and I'd like to address that. That prior request has been withdrawn. This request is different than that request in that, one, the property that is subject to our request tonight is different than the property that we requested about a year ago. We're requesting a smaller portion or less of the right-of-way to be sold. And we believe that by doing that, it will allow the city to better continue to serve, provide services to the Favreville residents, as well as provide a place where people can turn around legally and safely on public property. So for those two reasons, we think, and we know that this is a different request. Now, I would also submit to you that as any applicant has, we always have the ability to withdraw a request, and we always have the ability to bring a new request. There is nothing in the law generally, nor is there anything in the ordinances of the city of Covington that says once an application is filed, it can never be withdrawn, or that a new application can be brought forward. So I believe that we're clearly within our rights this evening to bring this different request, and we ask for your consideration. This portion of the right-of-way is unopened, and that's important. There is not a street there. We've heard that today. There is no physical roadway right there. There is a gravel driveway that was constructed by my clients to get to some of their homes. But there is not a roadway that is there or that has ever been there to the best of our knowledge. There's been suggestion that my clients covered a roadway with dirt and grass and so forth. What I can tell you is that for the last 70 years, there's been nothing but a green field there. That's all that's ever been there. In my lifetime, I can never remember anything that was ever there, other than what you see today. So it's simply inaccurate, I think, to suggest that we covered a roadway. There is a right-of-way there. There are unopened rights-of-way all over St. Tammany Parish and all over the city of Covington. Those rights-of-way are created on paper, but there is no physical roadway there, and that's exactly what we're dealing with in this instance. But for over 70 years, my clients have owned the property surrounding this area. They've maintained this area. They've maintained cutting the grass, removing debris, taking care of the area after there were hurricanes and storms. And yes, there was a tennis court that was built in 1961. That's how long that tennis court has been there. That tennis court was built by an ancestor of my clients. It was our understanding that there was a donation made to the city for playground equipment for the children, and that my client's ancestors would have the ability to use the right-of-way. This right-of-way and that tennis court has been there since the 60s, maintained entirely. Never once has there been an objection. Never once. Administrations have come and gone. Never once has there been an objection about anything that was there. In 1988, the Favreville subdivision was formally created. There was a process that we went through, that the city was here, and that subdivision was created just as it is today, just as it has been. There was no objection to anything that was done or that is being done. All of that has been maintained through all of these years without issue. We do now have an issue. We have an issue that has occurred because there's a desire from the Fredericks to be able to access their home at the end of the right-of-way through the right-of-way. That is creating a number of serious concerns and problems. I mentioned to you, those of you that were here about 11 months ago, that we were concerned that that would give rise to problems. There have been problems since that time. And some of my clients will speak to that in more detail. But at this point, we have an issue. We need a resolution to that issue. We think that the best resolution to that issue is the sale, pursuant to your code, of the right-of-way. And there are a number of reasons that I think it makes sense. There is not anyone that needs that right-of-way for legal access or physical access to their property except my clients. We're the only ones. The city has no public need for the right-of-way. If there are utilities, they would reserve servitudes for that. The city has not spent money on that right-of-way and should not have to spend any money on that right-of-way. The sale of the right-of-way would resolve long-term legal issues as to the right-of-way, and it would also resolve once and for all the safety concerns and safety issues that we're experiencing out there now. If there is no sale of the right-of-way, respectfully, I don't think the status quo can just continue. There are too many issues that have arisen. Something's got to happen one way or the other. We don't believe the city should have to build a street and build out the drainage. We believe the better solution is simply the sale of the right-of-way. And what we're asking is not uncommon. You just did it in the case before us. But it happens all the time. A quick look in the public records, there were at least 10 other sales by the city. Mr. Villery mentioned ones that he's aware of just from his long experience with the city. And the ordinance specifically states that there are 4 processes by which this can be accomplished. One is the sale of the right-of-way. That is what we are asking for. I think Mr. Roderick did a good job of laying out what the law says, and the law is very clear. For a private sale, it does not require the consent of any of the adjoining landowners. It does not require. This request this evening does not require the consent of any adjoining landowners. For 70 years, everything was tranquil and peaceful in that area. That is not the case today. Nobody needs this right-of-way for access other than the people that are asking to have it sold to them. The city has been clear that they don't want the right-of-way. The Fredericks, respectfully, don't need the right-of-way. The right-of-way should be sold. We strongly urge you to consider what we've laid out this evening, what you'll hear from some of the other speakers, and that you make a positive recommendation to resolve these issues and sell this right-of-way for the benefit of the city and moving forward. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Commissioners?
I
Mr.
just
Villari.
wanted to point out that the second half of that statement that I made was every lot in the subdivided property shall be served by a publicly dedicated street. That's past tense.
If I could point out, too, you've got multiple times in the city, Favreauville and the Fredericks are just 2 of examples of where there have been re-subdivisions where there were private streets. And I would tell you that in this instance, we have a very unique situation, but with very real issues and very real concerns. If there was ever a case for another exception, I believe this would be it.
I think that the city has made mistakes in the past, but I don't think it's a reason to continue. And as long as I've been on the planning commission, I've taken the position that every subdivision, re-subdivision is now a call on re-subdivision, need to have access to a public right. So, I mean, I understand. I understand. I respectfully disagree. I think this would fix an issue.
Commissioners, any other questions? Ms. Owens?
My concern goes back to what Mr. Cecil said. Is or is that not a functional fire hydrant? There's a lot of family homes around there. It doesn't look or appear that there's a lot of pine trees there. But that doesn't stop lightning from striking any structure. So if that's not a functioning fire hydrant, what's to happen to that structure, any structure, if a fire starts jumping? Because some of these are older structures, if I'm not mistaken.
Sure.
What happens if that fire, lightning happens to strike and it jumps from tree to house to house to house? And there is not a functioning fire hydrant there. I think it's for the safety of those who live in this area, no matter who they are, that needs to be a functioning fire hydrant.
I would agree with everything you've said. I wouldn't disagree with any of that. I would just point out that our request would not modify that hydrant or the utilities that are there. If that hydrant is not active and the city believes that it needs to be active after looking at it, then the city would reserve a servitude so that they have the ability to activate that hydrant. Our request this evening, the sale of the right-of-way, would not impede anything that Ms. Swords just mentioned.
Commissioners?
Yeah, I agree. Even if that became a gated community, I believe we have a portion in our ordinance that the community has to provide a black box or a brown box to give the public utilities and the fire department and the police department access to that property. That's available 24/7. So I think that part of it's covered. The second part, the catalyst for those utilities being upgraded, maintained in place, especially the fire hydrant and any fire protection, the catalyst for that would be the sale and the proper utility easement language that would go into that disposition. So I think that part of it is covered through the transaction. And that was my biggest concern for that part of it. The second part is, Paul, that you're standing there, is, and I know that it was noted that in a revision, to go back and to stop or to limit the area for disposition up to Carroll Drive. That's what you're considering as the turnaround, would be a dead-end turnaround for the city to be able to utilize that as well as services?
That's correct. That would allow the city to more easily continue to provide garbage service and other services that they have, continue to provide in that area, and to do so continue on public property to do it.
And to move that line northward to the end where those two brick columns are, I think if I plotted it out correctly, it would be at the northern corners of lots 25 and 2. That's on Kelly McHugh's survey.
Yes, I think that is correct.
If that disposition from the sale, from the city would move, if that line would move to that point, do we see a hardship for services to any of these? Because we still end up having the same kind of condition that we have currently today by leaving a section, a short section of that undeveloped America Street still belonging to the city. My personal opinion is the city should not be in the real estate business, other than specific properties, specific to services of the city. And I like that we were able to dispose of some of this property and get it off our books, and plus we have an income source for that. So with that said, what would be the hardships, in your opinion, if that line was advanced to the corners of lots 2 and 25 at those brick columns?
And that is about where we were originally in our original request. So in doing that, that would be then where the city services would stop. And so right now, garbage and so forth is basically picked up right at that Carroll Drive intersection right there.
Okay.
So it would push further away the city services to some of these other lots. So moving it back would allow those city services to continue as they have been. Also, if we move that line up to 25 and 22, there's not really a place for the public to turn around. If we move it back to Carroll Drive, then there is more because of that Carroll Drive right-of-way there without having to get onto a particular lot where people could turn around if necessary.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll wait to hear others.
Commissioners, any other questions for Mr. Marone? Okay, you can sit. The petitioner now for Mr. Fredericks. Please Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Alex Perugine, 527 East Boston Street, Suite 201, Covington. Around 70 years ago, somebody threw a bunch of dirt over the street and let the grass grow. Around 63 years ago, they decided that they'd talk to the administration of the time and offer to buy them a bunch of playground equipment if in exchange they'd look the other way while they built a tennis court. Basically, it's corruption. They did. They built the tennis court on top of a piece of city street that they took out of use because they didn't want it anymore. Now they want to be rewarded. They want to be rewarded by having complete and total ownership of a public street. At first, they argued that they had acquired it through acquisitive prescription, which of course doesn't work that way. You can't acquire property from the state, from the government, from the city. Can't be done. Their request to be rewarded is in direct contravention of the application by Mr. Frederick, which is not before you tonight, but which Mr. Villery very much put onto the map of this discussion. All Mr. Frederick has asked for is the right to put a driveway to South America Street. That's all he's asking. A driveway from his house, which is at the end of South America Street, onto South America Street. This is not a major request, it is a minor request. It doesn't require anything happen to their tennis court. Of course, their tennis court, as Mr. Rodriguez has told you, is actually a public tennis court. Of course, when people try to go play publicly, they take the nets down. What we're dealing with here is insidious. These people took this property, this public property, and they put dirt over it, and they made it their little playground. And now they want it completely theirs, insulated from the city. Nobody can go on it. They control it all right there in the middle of the city. The statute says that every address in the city should have access to a public road. It's a simple statement. People should be free to walk down the public roads anytime they want. This is not a situation where someone is coming to you and saying, oh, please sell me this right of access. You can cloak it that way all you want. What they're trying to buy is a city street. It's reprehensible. This situation has gotten worse because they're making request after request of the City Council and of the Planning and Zoning Commission for permission to do something that shouldn't even be within the realm of heard. This is not a reasonable request. If you want to do this, you should be able to do this. Go find your own subdivision. Go into unincorporated St. Tammany and build your private area with all your family's houses in it. Fine. But don't take the city of Covington and start dicing it up, because there'll be no end to it. Thank you.
Commissioners,
My only
comments,
comment
questions?
is that I don't want you to understand that I think that it should be opened up to Mr. President. I think that that's a city council function, that the city can say yes or no, you can access the right of way.
I agree with you completely. I was just
And
using
the
your
city
comment.
could- The city has options. The city council could say, Mr. Frederick, you have to open that street up to minimum standards. And those minimum standards could be expensive. The city's not in the road building business. But from my standpoint, I would just leave it like it is right now. And
That's-
not allow any access from Mr. President. And let him use the right of way that goes back to New Hampshire.
And that's fine.
That's my
The application has not been calendared or anything.
What's that?
The application is not currently calendared, I believe. Mr. Frederick's application.
Yeah.
Yeah. There doesn't have to be any action taken. The best thing to do is to simply say, no, let's let the situation go on. It hasn't been a crisis. What they want is to chop a piece of the city and declare it their own fiefdom. It is not something that you should consider doing. It is if it is up to the city council, let it be up to the city council. But don't put your approval on this, don't stand for this.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I am again military. I'm a nurse.
Okay.
And I deal with a lot of common sense, and I don't understand a lot of the lingo that's in here. That's why I asked people to explain it to me. But you're going back to an accusation made sometimes in the 60s when dirt was dumped on a road. You got pictures of that, you got proof of that. If not, you're making an alleged accusation. And I'm not going to argue with you. I am just stating my opinion, okay?
Okay. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Paul Marone, their lawyer, said at the prior application and at this application, what they did was they got what they thought was approval from the city to build a tennis court on a city street in exchange for buying a bunch of playground equipment. They thought it was a deal. There's no paper on it. The tennis court was built. Maybe the playgrounds got their equipment. I don't know. But property never transferred. It's a public road. It's a tennis court on a public road.
I moved into Covington in the early 70s. My husband and I dated and used to walk Covington and drive everywhere. To my recollection, there has never been a paved road beyond the intersection of 16th and South America. Never, that is in my recollection of 60, well, I'm 65 now, but when I started dating in 17 and 18, there was never a road there.
And
Never blacktop there.
I believe that this happened in 1961 is the date we were given.
I'm sorry, I just take exception with your entire accusatory name.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
Commissioners, any other questions for Mr.?
And again, this commission is, can only make the recommendation to the council. We can't determine yea or nay. We just make a recommendation based on what's being presented to us today. So it's not like we can't create law.
That's absolutely correct, sir. I completely recognize the accuracy of what you're saying.
Okay.
This is simply a recommendation made to others.
I did mistake, I do have a note. And one of the maps that we were given, and this is the Fredericks and the Fredericks map, is there currently at the end of the lane, that is, I guess a gravel lane from 16th into, is that a full turnaround on, at the end, which appears to be on part of lot 13? Is that an operable full turnaround?
I don't know.
Who knows? Who lives there?
But,
It depends. Be an objective to the
hold on.
answer.
This right here. Is there an actual turnaround? So this is 16.
Okay,
No, this
so-
is 16.
Right.
And this is
So,
South America.
so this is my property down here at the dead end. This is not a turnaround. This is a private, it's a private drive on a public street.
No, there's no turnaround, dead end.
And just another point of information, you know, the city, had a bloody battle over the hotspots for 20 years. In the late 80s, the Supreme Court refused to take it up, and the appellate court said you cannot prescribe against the city. The city then made a few owners remove the property, but not everybody.
Right.
You know,
I'm
the
aware.
hotel is on,
We're not asking for
so,
any
You
action.
know, as far as the tennis court, there's been encroachments over, going back to the 1800s, by people who thought, you know, they could encroach, and those encroachments are still on right today.
Yeah, we're not asking for any action, Mr. Villery. I want to be clear about that. I mean, we think the status quo is fine. I mean,
Status quo is you don't have access to that.
yeah, I know. Renee's filed an application on that. That's not before us today. It hasn't been calendared at all.
Okay, Commissioners, any other questions? We have some more speakers to get to. Thank you, Mr. Cleveland. I have Mr. Baldwin Reed. Come to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Baldwin Reed. I presently live at 616 South America Street. But before that, I grew up and I lived at 622 America Street for most of my life. I am a member of the Favreville LLC, and I appreciate some of the questions that you're asking tonight. By approving the purchase of this parcel, you can fix what has become a big problem and a safety hazard. You can do something to greatly benefit the city of Covington. We offer a solution that will restore peace and end this conflict once and for all, and it will provide a windfall to the city of Covington. The Fredericks oppose our purchase, and they want you to believe that they are entitled to a second driveway to their home to correct some kind of wrong committed against them in the city over 60 years ago. On the contrary, I'd like to tell you what is wrong. In February of 2024, the Fredericks chose bullying as their tactic to get their way. First, they launched a social media campaign against us that included name-calling, character smearing, accusations of criminality, invitations to destroy the tennis court, threats, misrepresentations, and falsehoods, including claiming that they have no public road access. These attacks on us continue to this day. I will not dignify their rants by providing all the specifics, although we have documented all of it. But I'll tell you that to call it incivility would be a gross understatement, and many comments would be considered libelous. Since then, things quickly got worse. They began driving on our driveways and access across the green space that we maintain, sometimes at dangerous speeds. Members of the Frederick household and their invitees began using the right-of-way and trespassing at will across our private properties. They have vandalized our property. They have vandalized the tennis court. They directed FUs at us several times. Of course, they used the actual word. We have audio and video documentation of over 50 acts of hostility directed at us by the Fredericks. Despite all this aggression directed at us, we chose not to engage, and for over a year we have remained civil and non-confrontational. Yet we have nevertheless remained very concerned about vehicles and our safety. The only communications we directed at the Fredericks household were to ask them to not damage the tennis court, which they proceeded to do anyway. We have been told FU one too many times. When asked, city officials told us to protect ourselves and to start reporting any criminal activity. So we began to exercise our civil right to report crimes of trespass on our private properties, vandalism, and disturbing the peace. We were also told that the city officials asked Mr. Frederick, for safety's sake, to stop driving on the right-of-way until this matter was resolved. He did not, and we were directed to report these incidents to CPD as well. Mr. Frederick grossly misrepresents our complaints of trespassing as calling the cops on the neighbor's kids for retrieving a tennis ball. On the contrary, members of the Frederick household have run rampant on our private lots. They have destroyed our property. They yell obscenities at us just steps from our front door, and they have come up our driveways towards our homes to taunt us and call names for sport. They admit to having thrown fireworks at our homes, and they had yelled at us that they want a terrorist to blow up our house. In response to Mr. Bell's polite request to members of the Frederick household that they not damage the tennis court, they yelled "F-you" at Mrs. Bell, and they used the full word. No, we're not complaining about kids retrieving tennis balls, and all of our complaints have been accompanied by evidence. As with the Fredericks' personal attacks on us, their misrepresentation of facts and the noise they direct at us simply indicates they do not have logic and facts on their side. I'm going to skip some of this stuff because I could talk for a long time. I'd like to point out to you that if you vote to approve this sale, you would be prioritizing the safety of the citizens of Covington. You would bring significant immediate revenue to our city. You would create a recurring source of revenue for our city in the form of perpetual property taxes.
You have 30 seconds.
I'm sorry. Okay. Well, I have so much more to say. But to answer your question, Ms. Swords, there was never a street where that tennis court is. I'm older than you are. I remember the tennis court being constructed. It was never a street. I used to play in the Favreau home that the Fredericks now own. It was never a street. So Mr. Fredericks is making false claims. He should be ashamed of himself, and I think because of that, you should take everything he says with a huge grain of salt. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Fredericks or Mr. Perigine, would you like to respond to that? I'm going to do that, and then I'm not going to get into a match, but you have a right to say something.
We have a photograph, an aerial photograph from the 1940s. It shows the street. We're happy to introduce that into evidence or into the record in some fashion, and I'll ask your leave to let us supplement the record tomorrow to throw that photograph in, if that's okay with you. Sir.
You could turn it into the city.
I'll turn it into Rod's office tomorrow. I just wanted to note that. I want to make one other point. This has gotten a little strange to me in the following sense. We don't want anything other than not to turn private what is public. Public is a good, and we believe in the public good. All we want is to maintain public access on public roads and not create little fiefdoms. Thank you.
Commissioners, you have any questions or comments at this time? We have a few more speakers.
I just have one comment. Is there a problem with connecting or allowing a driveway, gravel lane, whatever this limestone driveway is, where the appears to be a circle on lot 13 with Mr. Frederick's driveway off of New Hampshire?
But I need to reiterate, that's not what's before us at this point, so it's not open for discussion.
I just thought.
Any comment? No, let me put this in order. Let's go with Janet Favreau. Please come to the front, state your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Janet Favreau. My husband Thomas and I own the home at 800 South America, immediately adjacent to the Frederick property. I want to thank you for allowing me to speak. I would like to address 3 valid concerns we have: our public safety, trespassing, and our risk of flooding. And I would like to respect your request not to repeat some of the things that were just said, so I'm going to pass over a few things about some incidences, but I will say that the traffic on our driveway and the green space has exploded. One instance I will say is that another driver coming from the Frederick house slowed down only when my granddaughter grabbed her small dog to avoid it from being hit by this vehicle. Recurring instances such as these leave us in constant fear of our safety. The green space is not a drivable street. It is a lawn with oak trees. The Fredericks have never spent money on the upkeep of the tennis court or this green space. They have their own driveway, but they regularly use ours. Our driveway is not a street. It is our only means to our home. We would never consider driving on the Fredericks driveway to access South New Hampshire, even though it would be a much shorter way for us to get to a city street. But it's interesting that the Fredericks choose to use our driveway, which is for them 5 times longer than the one that they bought with their home. It makes no sense. In January, the mayor informed us that Chief Farrell concluded that cars using the right-of-way as a thorough street or public safety concern, and we agree. He also told Mr. Frederick to please discontinue driving on the road. The Fredericks did not heed his request. In addition, I consistently see that I do not recognize trespass or drive onto the circular driveway that is on our private property and not on the road. We have documented at least 62 separate vehicles turning around in our private driveway in a 10-week time frame. It is unsettling to have these vehicles constantly pulling up to our home. They cause us concern for our security. The dogs bark, headlights shine in our windows, and our peace is compromised. Nobody's driveway should be used as a public cul-de-sac. I wonder how the Fredericks would react if all of this traffic turned around in their circular driveway. We urge the city to please provide a safe and legal way for the public to turn around. If our purchase of this parcel is approved, the public may be directed to turn around where South America Street meets Carroll Drive rather than in our driveway. Lastly, in 2016, our home flooded from water that entered our home from the road and not from the river. Adding additional driveway surface to the road will render our home even more vulnerable to the flooding. The city engineer has stated the same thing. Please do not put us at a greater risk of flooding again. We kindly ask for your support of our application, and thank you for your attention.
Commissioners?
Who owns lots 2, 4, 24, and 25? Are they, I'm sorry, I only have,
Mr. Marone, you want to speak to that? Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Michael Bell. I reside at 810 South America Street. And to answer the questions, Lot 2 is owned by the Richardson family. Lot 4 is owned by the Small Page family. And lots 25 and 24 are owned by the Schoonmaker family. I'll give you their first name.
are they Favreau? Are they Favreau?
Yes, they're
family
Favreau,
members?
they're
Okay,
Favreau
that's what
relatives.
I'm sorry, that's what I was getting at. Are they Favreau family?
Yes, that's correct, yeah. Thank you.
I don't, what happened?
Go ahead, please state your name and, yeah, and I'm going to put a stop to the back and forth
Yeah,
of
just-
comments.
I
Go
won't
ahead.
even go
You
5
have a right
minutes,
to-
2
go ahead.
minutes. My name is Renee Frederick, 830 South New Hampshire. I wasn't planning on talking tonight. I was going to let my attorney do all the talking, but my mother is in the audience, and she told me I better get up and say something in response to these ridiculous allegations that have been made. None of this is true. I have been more than civil with these people. I've offered every kind of compromise. All I did was apply to use a city street. That's all I did. And they have opposed it. I don't want to mess with their tennis courts. The city wants to sell them the tennis courts, great. I don't care. But it is a public city street. My house is at the dead end of that street. I am entitled to use it. I am absolutely entitled to that. There's no doubt about it. Like you said,
I don't agree that you.
I know that you don't agree with it, but like you said, every house has to have access to a public street. My fire hydrant sits out there, all my utilities come down there. I mean, I'm willing to extend the same compromise that I've been extending from the beginning. They can buy the tennis court from the city if they want to, but I should be allowed to use this street. It should not be sold to them. So that's my 2 minutes. Everything, all the allegations of kids saying stuff, nobody's done anything to these people. We drive down the street sometimes, yes, because it's a public city street. They use it. My neighbor uses it all the time to back up to his garage. Everybody uses it. The public uses it because it's a public piece of property. Golf carts go up and down there. People walk up and down the street onto my driveway and go out to New Hampshire. I don't say a word because I'm not nuts like these people. So
I have a question.
that's my 2 cents.
I have a question. What happened between you and David that makes
Oh, nothing in particular. It's not that I don't want to use that. Actually, I would like to, if I had access to South America Street, I might close that in and build a garage there or something, but it would increase my ability to use my own property. Like, I wouldn't have to go
So
down
nothing
there.
happened between you and David?
I mean, nothing's, like, I don't mind, I don't mind using the right of way.
Because it is quicker just to go straight out the property.
It is, but why couldn't I have two accesses? Why, I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
No, please, stop.
But, no, I mean, I'm just answering his question.
No, you can talk.
Yeah.
None of the rest of it.
Something I've been thinking about. So
Yeah, I mean, nothing, I would like to build a garage there. I would like to close it off so that, there won't be any through traffic. They're worried about through traffic, there won't be any through
So
traffic.
you intend to close your.
That's what I'm hoping to do.
And just use South America.
That's my plan.
exclusively.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'd keep the right of way just for trash service and stuff, because I can walk my trash to the street right there.
You'd have to haul your trash all the way out to Carroll Drive.
No, I can keep bringing it to New Hampshire Street. I mean,
And are you
Okay.
willing to bring that road up to standards with drainage, with sewer,
So,
water?
I mean,
And,
I'm going over my 2 minutes, but I'm answering your question.
it's a yes or no question.
Right, if the dirt is removed, there's a street underneath it. If the dirt is removed, my property drains all of Fabreville.
No, my question is, are you willing to bring
Oh,
that
yeah.
road up to
Yeah.
standards all the way from there? You might have to bring it all the way up to 16th Avenue.
So my application to the city said, I will front whatever costs to do whatever their engineer said. My engineers
Have
looked,
your engineers familiar with city Covington subdivision regulations for the road construction?
well, I think they'd have to tear down the tennis court to bring it up to code.
But
I mean, that's the reality.
it
Is
would cost a lot more.
right? If I had to bring it
That
up
was
to
my
some
question.
code,
So, yes,
the
you're
the
willing
tennis court has to go. If we're going to meet the city standards, but I don't think that that's required, because if all I have to do is remove dirt, my engineers say the drainage will greatly improve back there if we remove that berm.
impose whatever they want.
What's that?
They can say yes, no, they can say you gotta bring it up.
Yeah, no.
Anyway,
But no action has been taken on that application, is my point. It's been sitting on the mayor's
Yeah,
desk.
that's a whole other issue and not before. Okay,
I agree.
thank you. Let me move on for the sake of time. I have one more person from Fabreville, M.A. Bell. You want to come say something? I don't want to hear anything about what the Fredericks may have done or may not have done. I'm not interested in rehashing any of that. Give me something new, or don't give me anything, and you can start.
Good evening, and thank you also very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Amy Bell, and I live at 810 South America Street. I think it is important to understand what we've been going through. Over the past year, Mr. and Mrs. Frederick have repeatedly claimed that we have freaked out and that we hate them. They say that we are hysterical, completely insane, bitter, unstable, spoiled children, and they have claimed that I personally have lost my mind. We understand that people often project upon others what lies within themselves, and perhaps that is what's happened here. The Fredericks' own words tell us how they feel about us, and in January, a member of the Frederick household stated that Mrs. Frederick hates us. We don't hate anyone. When the Fredericks moved in, Janet and Thomas Favreau brought them a bottle of wine and welcomed them to the neighborhood. And I shared with them some awesome pineapple brown sugar venison sausage. As upsetting as the continuous hostility and falsehoods directed at us, we did not respond to them. We simply pointed out to the city officials why vehicular traffic through the green space is a bad idea. We don't care about the tennis court. We care about our safety. Just this afternoon, just today, this is a part of the dialogue that we heard in front of our home on the tennis court. Quote, "This is kind of boring. Do you guys want to go? Let's do a few more laps and PISS them off." okay, let's go. Then one flips the bird at Mrs. Murphy's home and yells, F you. This is daily. This is what we live with. We, the subdivision residents, are hardworking, law-abiding, tax-paying, humble citizens. For over a century, we have maintained an amicable relationship with the city of Covington, and we aim to continue that good rapport now and in the future. For over a year, we have remained calm and civil. We smile and we wave at the folks in our neighborhood. We offer good cheer. We are grateful, we are joyful, and we are hopeful. We wish to get this disagreement behind us and to enjoy with our neighbors the South's friendliest town. We respectfully request your support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if I can pronounce the last name. You want to give it a shot? It starts with a G and it ends with a E, yeah. Sam, you want to come to the front and state your name and address for the record?
Good evening, I'm Sam Gerberga.
Oh, there you go, Jaberga, okay,
East
got it.
17th, just like it sounds. Thank you for giving me a couple of minutes. I want to introduce myself to you all. I was the interim city councilman last year when all of these matters began to sort of manifest themselves, and so I have a little bit of insight, to the situation that I think might be helpful to you. I guess the most important thing that I'd like to impart and hope that we can take away from this is a political problem. This is a political problem, and you're not a political body, thank goodness, right? You're a body that has been appointed by the political officials to serve in the area of planning and zoning, and you make decisions about planning and zoning questions. So the good news here is, while we've heard all kinds of political angst and political issues tonight, those are not issues that you have to think about, right? We have to let the politicians decide those questions. They're the ones that are accountable to us as citizens. And so my strongest wish is that we can get this from here to them. There has been a political process, or at least an administrative process, that's happened from this point to here, and that is the city has made a judgment, as a matter of city management, that it does not want the obligation of owning this land anymore. That's a decision the city can make. We saw in the case right before this one that the city made a similar judgment, right? And it comes to the Planning and Zoning Commission under the statute. And let me just read real quickly what the statute says, because I think it's important to ground ourselves. It says, notwithstanding any law to the contrary, if the city council of the city of Covington determines that any servitude, and this is a servitude, street or road, which is owned by the city, is no longer needed for public use, it may dispose of such properties provided in this article, okay? So there has been a determination that has been made that this is no longer useful to the city. From a zoning perspective, and it was such a great lesson we got earlier in the day on zoning from Alex, right? From a zoning perspective, I think you all have legitimate concerns there, right? What if this particular piece of property is part of a zoning plan that you have, that you're working on? Or what if it's part of a new project or something of that nature, where you might want to say, no, city, bad move, we shouldn't do this. But that's not what's going on here. This truly is about maintaining the status quo. There is no change. The only change is a change in ownership from the city to a private owner, right? And the city has made a determination. We don't need this. That is a question, I think, that can be easily answered by you all from a zoning perspective only, not a public safety issue, not a, all of the other things we've heard about, which are unfortunate. All of that will be heard at the city council. But if you vote no, the problem is that you upset the apple cart in terms of that political process. Because now the city council has to have a supermajority to outweigh what you've done. Again, if there was truly a zoning issue that was in front of you, and a real zoning interest that was in front of you, and you decided no, then maybe that supermajority makes sense. But arguments about neighborly relations are not a zoning question. It's a political question. This ought to go to the city council and let them grapple with it. Thank you very much.
This is a planning question, not a zoning. Commissioner?
I have a question for Callie, if you will. I'm kind of stuck on the utilities. Ms. Callie, thank you for coming tonight. Are you aware of?
Yes, I'm aware of the water meter and the fire hydrant that is there at the end of
Of South America?
Yes, of South America. And regardless of whether the fire hydrant is active, the water meter should be. And so if this is approved as a sale of property, then we will need a utility servitude through that area.
Right. Now, with that said, going back to what has been described as, are there redundant utilities that come off of South Hampshire using the private drive to serve the Fredericks parcels?
I'm unsure if there is a separate utility that comes off of New Hampshire. More than likely it connects at South America.
Okay. So that servitude would extend all the way to that, what's on the survey as called a gravel drive. Yeah, I mean, I took my work truck back there today, and, I mean, it's basically just a path.
Yes, you're correct. That would
I'm
that would
sorry?
extend to what's currently described as the gravel drive.
Right. And so there's no way through this process that the hardship of utilities would be on the Fredericks. Is that correct? Because they would be forced through the disposition of the city, the buyer would be forced to create this servitude to maintain the utilities to that.
Yes, what
private
happens
drive.
is, if you recall, we just had a revocation on 12th Avenue. And in that case, Public Works determined that there was an underground drainage culvert in the area to be revoked or the area to be sold. And in fact, the city reserved a 15-foot drainage servitude to accommodate the existing culvert running parallel to 12th. Same scenario. Anytime Public Works or the city engineer determines that there are utility lines within a servitude or a street to be conveyed or revoked, the city always reserves unto itself a utility servitude to accommodate all existing utilities.
Thank you. And it's also my understanding, working with the city of Covington as often as I do, is that, speaking of the tennis court, if there's an active line under that tennis court, if there was something happen to that line, not to disrupt any service, the tennis court would be excavated, right? And that would be part of that easement, so that everybody knows.
It could be dug up, or the line could be replaced, depending on what's most cost efficient for the
Right.
city.
And that's the city's decision,
Correct.
based on because of the width of that servitude.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. We have another card member, a Roland Gallatin. Would you like to come to the front? State your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. Roland Gallatin, 530 South America Street. No one has brought up what might happen to the land if is sold. Okay? It's not city property anymore. Because once it's private land, people can do whatever they want with it, right? I mean, within the code and permitting and such. But the reason I bring this up is because the last time Baldwin Reed purchased property was right outside the gate of Fabreville, and he clear-cut the entire parcel without a single street permit. Scorched earth, okay? So now that this has become political, isn't there a concern about what they would do with the property once they took possession of it? They would try to, wouldn't they try to concrete the situation so that it could never be controversial again? So they might clear cut the parcel. They might drive pilings and build something there. That's my concern. So I would ask that this council take that into consideration.
Okay. And I think that about does it for speakers, unless there's somebody else that I've missed. Go ahead. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is C. Longclough at 703 East 16th Avenue, 1 block away from this fiasco. I moved in downtown Covington because of the history, the family, my daughters. We'd have a great, peaceful life. Ever since I've been there, I've had problems with the Fabreville group. I walked down that street that we're talking about and got verbally assaulted by somebody out of a house. Walking down the street, what are you doing here? This is private property. So this issue that the Fredericks are horrible people, and I know them. Their kids ride their bikes right next to my house all the time. I have never had one problem with their children or them, okay? But I've had problems over here. So I'm in the middle of both of it. I have no skin in the game. I just want to balance it out from my experience. My big question is this. The Fredericks home's been there 110 years, longer than anybody else's in Fabreville. Who put that street in then? Who put that road then? Because we talk about, the attorney goes back history. 60 years ago, they did a tennis court illegally. 60 years ago, they did this illegally. We want to go back. Let's really go back to the beginning of it all. Who put their road in? There was a road there. There was a street there. Why can't they use it today? And if you're going to put the price tag on the Fredericks that they have to pay all this money to maintain it or to fix it, whatever y'all think y'all need to do, shouldn't the Favreaus have to pay their bill once it's paid? Shouldn't they be brought up to code to make it a street also? If it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. We're putting a price tag on them, but nobody has said one word about what they have to do in maintaining that up to code. Doesn't that apply to them also? So again, my big question is this. Who put the road in originally? And just because the city of Covington did not do anything in all these years, that's not my problem. That's their problem. Just because they kicked the can down the road is not something I should be concerned about. So again, the road was put in and they were using it 110 years ago. So why can't they use it today? There's some wonderful people in Fabreville. I know some of them, they're probably going to hate me after this speech. But I can't sit back and listen to this when I know the family. I've never had any problems with them. They just want to use the street that was there 110 years ago. So I would ask you to stop and think. Common sense here. If we're going to use history as a basis of a decision, let's use the whole history. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, commissioners. Any questions, comments?
One quick question Thank you for your March 7th letter, by the way. I've read it several times, and it gives some clarification that we did not have at our last review. My question is, when we reviewed this a year ago, or right at a year, 10 months ago, there was an appraisal done, and then, but it never got back on the agenda for the city, for the council to review. Was there a reason? Because the withdrawal came after the fact, after that deadline.
Okay, I'd like to make a comment or two. The city has a right to dispose or eliminate existing property if it deems so necessary, or it doesn't want it anymore. What's before us is a request from a petitioner to purchase the property that the city doesn't want anymore. What we decide whether it should or shouldn't be is not a question of making a determination, can we or can we not. That's what's before us, and that's what's in the code. So I understand the political side of it, which I'm not going to get involved with from our perspective, and I appreciate all of the commissioners' comments that they have to make about it. So with that being said, and that's what's before us, I'm not going to make it any more of that or any less of that. But at this time, I would entertain a motion for anything. We gotta make a motion one way or the other.
Well, I can say, I mean, my position hasn't changed since the last time everybody was here, and I still believe that it's a public road, it's a public access, however substandard the access might be. And I think the code is very clear, and I think it's a zoning issue, it's not a political issue. When the code says that every subdivided property shall be served by a publicly dedicated street. It doesn't say the street has to be concrete, it says it has to be served by. So I'll make the motion to deny the request.
We have a motion, we need we need a second. Well, we need to get a second first. We gotta have we have to have a second motion in order to move his motion forward, otherwise we start over. It dies for lack of a second, yeah. Right. Do we have a second?
I don't know if my question necessarily make any bearing on it.
But I can't go out of order. I've got to have a second or the motion's going to die.
Second it and then ask my question?
You're going to second, and then we're going to have a vote. So you're making the second?
I'm seconding.
She's seconding the motion. We'll take a roll call.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Thinking of my directions, were these lots, not including the one on New Hampshire, were they previously part of Favreauville? And then they were sold? Did they previously have access to the road through Favreauville?
All the lots on America Street have access via America Street.
So does the lot that Renee bought and the one that was, now there's 3 lots here, were the lot where Renee's house and the one adjacent to that where there's a circular driveway, did they have access to the lane through Favreauville?
That home that the
100 years ago.
all I can tell you is that in the 1940s and 50s, one of the Favreaus lived in the home that the Fredericks live in now. That home at that time did not have access to South America. It accessed off of New Hampshire Street.
And it has a
Okay.
South Hampshire address and has had a South Hampshire address as far back as 911 goes.
Hi, my name is
Correct.
Jennifer Frederick, and I'm.
Okay, hold on, I've got to get this process started.
I just want to say about the address. Our home, the address was 1201 South America for 60 years. A 5-0 bought the home, lived in it for 10 years as 1201 South America. They got to the home that way. I have an aerial photo from 1936 from the historian. Our home's 110 years old. It's been there. It was the only home on the street before Farmerville even existed. It's been there. Our engineer, Mr. Eddie Murphy, there's drainage. Nothing has to be done. We're talking about 10,000 maybe of gravel to put down to get to the front of our home. To the front of our home. Imagine owning a house and you can never access the front of it. You have to go through a neighbor's yard to get to your house. If you sell this home will never, you'll never get to the front of it. I'm not just fighting for myself, I'm fighting for the people who are gonna live here in 50 years, in 100 years. They deserve a public road to their home.
Thanks. We'll take the roll call, please. This is to deny. Request. Yes
Okay.
means no, that's correct.
All right, Mr. Boone?
No.
Mr. Davidson? Ms. Swords?
Yes means no, I'm not in favor.
Mr. Celestine?
Okay, can we clarify this,
Please,
please,
please.
Brian?
There is a motion on the table to recommend against sale of the street.
Correct.
A yes vote
Is agreeing.
A yes vote is to deny the sale of the street.
Correct.
A no vote is in favor of the sale of the street.
Correct.
No, that's not true either. No vote
Is
is
against.
not allowed, that, but you would still need another motion in favor. If it's
Correct.
If it's passed, it's over.
Correct.
So a yes vote is to deny the sale of the street.
And so again, I voted no.
You voted no, Mr. Celestine?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Villery?
Yeah.
Mr. Bullock? No. Mr. Hudson?
No.
Failed.
Well, will now, yeah, the motion failed. I will now entertain another motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the request to purchase the portion case number 250301, sell to the city, be sent to the council for review.
We have a motion, we have a second. Second from Mr. Celestine. Roll call.
Mr. Boone?
Yes.
Mr. Davidson? Ms. Swords?
I'm still confused. Repeat what you said you wanted to do.
Yes is to approve.
To approve
The
the
sale.
sale.
Which sends it to the
Motion
council.
on the floor to authorize the city to sell a portion of South America.
As presented.
A yes vote is in favor of the sale, a no vote is against.
No.
Mr. Celestine? Mr. Villery? Mr. Bullock? Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
The motion passes, and we'll forward on. That being said,
I want to
Ms.
remind
McGee.
everybody, if you haven't finished your ethics training, to please finish it, because tomorrow I will send out the...
Excuse me. Please wait till the meeting is over. It's really rude just to up and out. Let's just finish it. We'll take 2 seconds.
Tomorrow, I'll be sending out the emails so you can start your sexual harassment prevention training. So,
Great.
you know, that's all for
Wonderful.
me, yes.
With that, we'll adjourn.